All right, folks, we've managed to conquer the technical difficulties and we now are ready to go live. So I'll just ask people to conclude any conversations that they're having and we'll kind of move forward. So, gentlemen, I'm just going to call the meeting to order if that's all right. Excellent, thanks. Amber, so just as a note, the camera has been a bit wonky and it is clearly off right now. So our apologies for that. We're hoping it may choose to resume itself, but it's apparently choosing its own path today. So I just want to begin by acknowledging the territories that we're on. We gather today on the territories of the Coast Salish, the Kwakwaka'wakw, and the Nishnawbe Nations, the traditional keepers of this land. And we'll start with a approval of the agenda. And it's my understanding that Director Banesh, you have something you wish to add. Do you want to briefly mention what that is? And then we can have the board vote as to what they added, and then we'll discuss it in detail later under new business. Go ahead, Director Banesh.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I would like to add something under new business called the Cortez Free Store Roof. And basic situation is that the free store roof on Cortez is leaking. The community has raised $4,500 to repair it. The total cost is around $6,000. So I'm just looking to open a discussion around if there's a way that we can support this roof getting fixed with another $1,500 coming from CSWM.
I'll second that.
Okay, that's been seconded. So here we're just to add this item to under new business later. So I can just get all those in favor. Great. And anyone opposed? And online, if you can, I think Lisa can see everyone, but if you please do speak up if you're opposed to that. Okay, thanks everyone. So we'll add that and we'll come back to that later under new business. And so that's the agenda, and that's been added to the agenda, and we just have a motion to actually approve the agenda as amended. Moved and seconded. Hillian and Wells. Any opposed? Okay, this is going well. Camera's still off. And we'll move to adoption of minutes. Okay, it's the Hillian and Wells team again and anyone opposed to adoption of the minutes? Great. Okay. Under reports, first is the Waste Management Advisory Committee, and that's for receipt. Can I get a motion for receipt, please? Okay, thanks very much. That's Wells and Davis. Anyone opposed? And are there any questions on those minutes? Okay, seeing none. Sorry, any opposed? Great. All right, and then we're moving on to more weighty items. The CSWM 2024 to 2026 financial plan, and that is also for receipt. Okay, and I'll pass it over to Steph.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning to the board. Vivian Shaw, our Senior Manager of CSWM Services, will be presenting the 2024 to 2028 proposed financial plan and walk through, I think, a PowerPoint to that effect, and then staff, Vivian and others will be able to participate in the discussion, answer any questions you might have. So, Vivian, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, James. Good morning, and through the CEO to Chair and the CSWM board, thank you so much for your time today. As James mentioned, myself, Lucy and Jesse are all, and Mark as well, our GM of Engineer, are all here to provide support in running through this financial plan with you today. But I'll just go through a quick presentation just to run you through the initial budget before turning it over to questions. This is just I think you've seen this slide before. This is really just a quick overview to provide context for this the financial plan that's before you. It's really just to illustrate the vast area that the CSWM service covers, provides support, provides waste collection, transportation, and disposal, spanning nearly 22,000 square kilometers, from Cayucit on the west coast all the way to the islands of Cortez, Demen, Hornby, Quadra, and the Discovery Islands, all the way down to Fanny Bay. The CSWM here is, we're responsible for the operations, maintenance, and annual compliance of all of our historical landfills, of which there are 5. The construction, operation, and maintenance, and of our new regional landfill with the leachate treatment and landfill gas collection, amongst many others. So this is all reflected in the financial plan that's before you today. This slide here is just on the first page of the report. It's just a summary of the service and the sub functions that are captured within function 391. This service, the CSWM service, is guided by our ministry approved solid waste management plan from 2012. And this is supported by the annual roundtable discussions that we have with our directors to ensure that our priorities as staff are continuing to meet the expectations of the CSWM board. And these are the 3 objectives that are clearly laid out in our solid waste management plan. Number 1, obviously, being the minimization of waste reduction. And there are a number of initiatives that I'll go through in our our work plan for 2024 that supports these initiatives. Examples being community education, continued advocacy with our provincial and federal governments, our solid waste management planning work, and so forth. For objective 2, it's the reduction of the GHG emissions. And this is really a lot of the work that we've done so far is around the construction of the organics facility and working with our municipal partners in rolling out the organics program this past year, as well as the exploration of the beneficial gas project up in Campbell River, and also finalizing the agreement for the upgrade and purchase of landfill gas at the Cumberland facility to create renewable natural gas. And then lastly, our objective to maintain regulatory compliance. This is, again, ongoing environmental operations at our facilities at Cumberland, the leachate landfill gas collection management up in Campbell River, with our landfill gas management there as well. So yeah, those are our key objectives that we continue to work towards. And
Okay, so for those online, I'm not sure if you are online, but all screens have gone black here. So unless there's a quick technical fix, Vivian, are you able to proceed without the slides? I know that's much more difficult to paint a picture of our budget, but
I can continue to walk through kind of the next few slides.
And just like that, it's back. Okay, turning it off and on, the oldest trick in the book. Okay, and wonderful. Thanks, Lisa. Okay, go ahead, Vivian.
This slide here just captures our work plan accomplishments for last year. I won't go into any of this because we've already provided a fairly detailed summary at the end of last year. But yeah, these were our significant achievements from 2023, which on both the capital and operational fronts. For 2024, this lays out our priorities for this year, and the strategic direction and the key work priorities for us as staff really comes from this financial plan and also the solid waste management plan objectives. It guides our work plan for this year. So key highlights, as mentioned in the report, we are striving to minimize that waste reduction, the material that's actually being landfilled at our regional landfill facility in Cumberland. There are 12 work priorities that's detailed under this section. And it's really around recognizing the finite nature of our landfill. And we want to really stress that importance of education to reduce waste at the source and the daily efforts, including enhanced compaction methods that we employ in waste segregation to maximize landfill airspace. And working with our municipal partners again to stress that need for education, to encourage that waste separation and recycling. And yeah, working closely with our municipal partners to do that so that we're moving forward in a consistent manner. In 2024, we're really going to focus more of our efforts around the multifamily and IC&I sector, which are not required to implement recycling collection service. There's a lot of work to be done in this space, which will require extensive collaboration with our municipal partners.
Sorry, Vivian, I was just noticing Director Hillian's light was on. I just want to, are you okay to take questions
sure.
as we move along, Director Hillian?
Thanks, Chair. I'm just a little bit unclear about your terminology. Minimize waste reduction. Would we not want to maximize waste reduction
Oh, got double negative problem.
and minimize waste?
That is true, yes.
Minor point, but I thought it was worth bringing up if we're going to publish this.
Yeah, you have to watch your semicolons when you're in the presence of Director Hillian, but excellent catch. Thank you.
Thank you. That will be corrected in the future slide. Sorry, where was I? Yes, maximizing our opportunities to the waste reduction efforts, and working with our community educator to provide that level of education, the resources in developing a outreach and partnership with the various multifamily and IC&I sectors, and looking at those pilots for 2024 amongst all the other ones that are on this list. We have, and again, as detailed out in the presentation from Tina at the end of last year, we have developed a comprehensive education plan for 2024 to provide CSWM presence through the schools, virtual and in-person engagements, as well as various events in both rural and urban communities to really improve our reach and improve that awareness and the understanding of the services that we offer. We are looking at potentially doing a organics pilot at schools throughout our core municipalities where they're currently being serviced. So that is something that we're looking to explore. And as well as working with our member municipalities from a policy perspective to grow and support and grow participation in the organics program in 2024. For objective 2, we're looking, again, continue to pursue that agreement for the purchase and upgrade of the landfill gas at the Cumberland facility, as well as opportunities up in Campbell River, and as well as conducting pilots for construction and demolition waste. And for objective 3, we're going to continue, obviously, our regulatory compliance for all of our landfills, ensuring that we are adhering to the environmental operations of our facilities, and our annual monitoring and reporting for all 5 of our legacy landfills. This slide here captures the human resources component of the line item within our budget. The CSWM service operates with 29.97 EFTs, and, or sorry, the final balance for 2024 is 30.68. So this figure here includes the 2024 ask for 1 additional EFT, and this relates to the new CSWM Communications and Engagement Advisor position. The creation of this position is more of a strategic move to bolster the waste management initiatives within the service. And it's really intended to focus on communication, education, and engagement, which will be critical in advancing the anticipated solid waste management plan.
Sorry, is it okay if I continue to just allow directors to ask questions as we move along?
Oh, my apologies. Okay, sounds good. Is this better? Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Thanks for pointing that out, Director Nicol.
So the role here is really, again, focused on the communication, education, and engagement. And it's really critical to the advancing the anticipated solid waste management plan and subsequent diversion programs and policies that are likely to come forward as part of this renewal process that we're working on. There are a number of key programs and goals and communication activities that will require a significant amount of communication resourcing that we're anticipating to come out of the solid waste management plan, which will include likely the continued focus on increasing participation in the organics program, the revival of C&D diversion efforts, expanded multifamily recycling, potential tipping fee increase depending on the solid waste management plan system review, greenhouse gas initiatives. Again, working with our municipal partners in harmonizing our waste reduction and contamination messaging, really working towards our waste diversion goals. So based on the feedback that we've heard from the solid waste management plan renewal so far, through steps 1 and 2, it is evident that our service, we in partnership with our municipal counterparts, we have a lot of work to do.
We have a very chatty group this morning. Director Mawhinney, you raised your hand. You had a question, and Vivian, I appreciate you allowing for a few interruptions every now and then. Director Mawhinney?
I appreciate that too. I was curious, I noticed in one of the earlier slides, there's talk of CND, and then there's also ICNI. And I was wondering if you could provide clarification on those acronyms and if there's a difference between the two of them. Thanks.
Yes, thank you so much for the question. C&D, and I will note that in future presentations to get rid of these acronyms. The C&D is construction and demolition waste. And that's a very targeted sector that we're really looking to focus our efforts on. It's one of the lower hanging fruits. It roughly accounts for about 1,100,000 of our 65,000 tons of waste that comes to the landfill every year. ICNI stands for institutional, commercial, and industrial waste. So that's all encompassing. I suppose construction does fall in there, but it is a much broader category than just the C&D piece.
Thanks. And just to
I appreciate that because I thought the C in C&D was also commercial. That's why I was confused.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And just, I was noticing that CND on the last slide was just 3 letters, C, then an N, then a D, and I think it's probably like an N that goes in the middle, just to make it clearer. Just channeling Director Hilly in there. Okay, thanks very much, Vivian.
No problem. Thank you for the good questions. So where was I? So yeah, in working with our municipal counterparts, again, we understand that there's a lot of work to do in providing that waste management education to residents, as well as developing trust in the work that we do, how we manage waste, where recycling goes, et cetera. And so this proposed CSWM communication and engagement advisor position is really strategically positioned to bridge that gap, working closely with our municipal partners, with our First Nation partners as well, to provide targeted education and potentially dispelling myths which may be out there, and aligning with our local initiatives with our overarching regional goals as defined through our solid waste management plan. And again, the goal here is to really just provide those building those strong ties with our municipalities and ensuring a cohesive education strategy, fostering that that region-wide commitment to responsible waste management. This slide here provides a snapshot of the revenue sources with year-over-year change for comparison. As you can see on the slide here, our revenues for this service essentially comes from two main sources, which encompasses our tipping fees and taxation. Our tipping fees cover the operation of facilities, and the tax requisition are there to generally pay for infrastructure needed by providing transfers to capital works reserves and to fund our long-term debt payments. The intention again here is to provide that stable rate of reserve fund contributions and the accruals of our annual surpluses if when they're available to help offset those future costs, to ensure the generational equity between the current and future users of our facilities. So that just basically means that the current beneficiaries of the service will pay for not just the day-to-day operation, but also proportionally pay their fair share of our assets and the progressive landfill closures of tomorrow. For 2024, the revenues for the service is again derived from roughly about 62% from tipping fees, 27% through tax requisition, and with the balance of roughly about 11% from other sources, or sorry, other revenues, recoveries, but predominantly prior year surplus carry forwards. The tipping fee for municipal solid waste has increased as of January 1st of this year from $145 per ton to $155 per ton for MSW and other MSW waste categories. And just for clarity, MSW refers to the waste that's generated from households, businesses, institution, construction, and demolition. Basically any waste that is destined for the landfill for final disposal. And I do want to just note that this rate here is fairly consistent with our neighboring jurisdictions of that Capital Regional District and the Regional District of Nanaimo are both at $150 per ton for 2024, and the other CVRD, Cowichan Valley to the south, is at $204 per ton. But they're a bit of an exception because they do export. So there are factors for exchange rate, transport, as well as contingency measures for in the event that there is disruption for transferring of their waste down south. Historically, I just want to also mention we have relied on prior year surplus to balance the budget, and it is something that we do need to move away from as it is not sustainable. So in future years budget, we're going to really take a look at our revenue sources and our service levels, or a combination thereof, to ensure that we're matching our revenue to our expenditures. This slide here, and it's also shown, I think, in figure 1 of your report. It's really just to demonstrate the increases in our landfill tonnage throughout the years, and we've consistently seen increases year over year. This region has experienced, similar to other areas, we've experienced economic growth, which was largely attributed to the pandemic in recent years, and which has resulted in increased waste volumes. But based on the trends that we're seeing, as well as confirmed by our neighboring jurisdiction, as well as our EPR programs, we are starting to see the probability of this starting to level off, which speaks to the surplus conversation that we just had in the previous slide. And again, just being mindful of that.
Thanks, Vivian, and alternate director Tyrion.
Yeah, if we're taking questions as we go here, I can't seem to make if you back up one slide or two slides, I can't seem to make the tipping fee revenues work. I must be missing something. At $155 a ton and 65,000 tons, I get just over $10 million. And we're showing a budget of $11,737,000. Where if I divide that just straight up, I've got 75,000 tons to produce that kind of revenue.
That tipping fee item is actually broken up into a whole bunch of different waste categories, so it's not it's not a direct correlation. So there are some items that we do charge a bit more for. So that's just more of a rolled up number. But there are some categories that are slightly higher for, like, for example, our controlled waste, which is charged out at 210, I think. And then contaminated waste is doubled that rate at $310 per ton, for example. So it's a rolled up number.
Okay, yep, that would explain it. Thank you.
But MSW is predominantly the waste category that predominantly takes up majority of that line item, but that's why it doesn't automatically correlate.
Okay, thank you.
This slide here is just to show the estimated residential tax rate and the tax impact based on BC Assessment's updated revised roll from January 2024. So as you can see, the estimated residential tax rate for 2024 will be 0.1025 cents per $1,000 of assessed value. So this will have a resulting tax impact for property values as shown on the left to illustrate what it translates into dollar-wise for the average assessed home for each of the municipalities provided by BC Assessment. And that's done in decreasing order of property values. So I know that's really small to see.
And Director Vinesh just raised his hand with the question. Director Vinesh.
Thank you, Chair. So when you're looking at the property tax impact here, that's the increase that each of these municipalities are expecting. And then my second question is do you have a line for Cortez?
That's not the increase, it's the total tax impact that you'll see. So for example, the town of Comox, that's the first line item, based on the 0.1025 per $1,000 of assessed value. The property owner with the average assessed value at 789,000, 100,000 will expect to see a property tax impact of $80.90. And for Cortez, I don't believe that was a number that was available yet, but we can make that available right after this meeting so that we can follow up with you after.
Thank you.
In terms of trends, challenges and opportunities, with the current economic environment, it is difficult to provide really accurate long-term range projections as there are a number of market conditions, worldwide economic uncertainties, and increasing regulatory obligations that come into play, which is summarized here. Again, we're continuing to see the increasing obligations and responsibilities downloaded from the province to us as local governments in the management of waste. And this is it will impacting our ability to be able to balance those service demands against the cost per household that you're seeing here. As well as coupling that with the pressures of aging infrastructure and asset renewal obligations as identified through our asset management plan, as well as uncertainties around our EPR programs, the extended producer responsibility in the management of recyclables. While CSWM does get reimbursed for those efforts to accept, store, and sort through accept, sort, and store those materials, it's not on a full cost recovery basis. The EPR programs really generally only cover transportation and processing costs. So there's aspects of that we do need to handle. And there's, again, uncertainty around the upcoming landfill gas regulations and the requirements for closure. And the trend is continuing towards landfill upgrades for improved environmental protection, which is a great thing, but it all comes at a cost. So these are all challenges that we face when we're trying to put together these much longer term projections. But in terms of opportunities, that we have significant, we've achieved significant accomplishments throughout the years under our current solid waste management plan over the past decade. But we do have a lot of opportunities to continue to improve. Our disposal rate is currently at 518 tons per capita, and this is in comparison to the BC average of 499 tons per capita, which means we're still a significant ways off from the BC target of 350 tons per capita. So a lot of the work that we're doing through the solid waste management plan will be finding ways for us to be able to get there. This slide here is the expenses, the overview of the expenses with year over year changes. And I won't go through it in great detail, but some of the notable items that we wanted to highlight is the support services, which we just wanted to highlight is currently showing within your plan at 1.3 million, which represents roughly about a 416,000 increase compared to 2023. But this, we wanted to stress that this has been recalculated to 999,000, which correlates to 113,000 increase. So this isn't reflected in the version that you guys, that in the appendix A that you see within your report, but this will be updated to the recommended budget that will be provided for you in the next meeting. This service here bears a share of the support services expenses, which is proportionate in accordance with our board policy. And that's providing support from IT, human resources, communications, legislative services, and financial services as well. For the personnel costs, as we covered in a couple slides prior, we're proposing an increase of 4.8%, which amounts to 160,000 for 2024. And this is again due to contractual wage increases per the QP collective agreement, as well as the proposed full-time communications engagement advisor position as previously covered. I also wanted to just highlight, we did drop the capital works manager position. Yeah, he's still at Cole Makinson, he's still with us, but he's been moved over to the conveyance project. So in terms of personnel costs, the total incremental increase amounts to 0.171 of an FTE. And then on the operating side, the operating costs are proposed to increase 8.75% compared to 2023. And some of the main drivers in this increased costs are attributed to the increase in contracted services as they relate to waste volumes and the corresponding transportation costs to the Cumberland facility from Campbell River and the rural communities. Another driver is the municipal contracts. So these are contracts that we contract out for the Village of Sabalis, Village of Tassis, Gold River, and transportation of seaward type materials. So this just saw a modest increase of roughly about 2%, and then these are mostly driven by updated wage schedules reflected in the new operating agreements. We also saw a bit of an increase of about 5% in operating contracts. These are again largely driven by higher fuel costs, which is scattered throughout these contracts. Recycling diversion initiatives saw an increase of 16%. This is largely due to the new tipping fee at New West Gypsum for the management of drywall. So that line item alone is $230,000 for the transport from our facility to New West Gypsum and New Westminster. Under this line item is also the Household Hazardous Waste Program, which amounts to 210, and then the mattress recycling program at almost 170,000. Hopefully this program will be transitioning over to the new provincial program in 2025, but for now it is still captured under our operating expenses. And then one of the other line items is the engineering and professional services work. There's a slew of studies that will need to be undertaken to be able to help support the solid waste management plan renewal as we dive into the various options analysis. So a lot of that will be taking place this year. This is the budget projections for the following 4 years from 2025 to 2028. So this is within your report, but we just wanted to highlight for year 2028, the reserve contribution appears to be erroneously higher than it, and that was an error on our part. There is the operating contract for Campbell River that is missing from there. We are looking to renew that, or sorry, go out to procurement for that contract, and that's that $2 million got missed in the 2028 line item under contract and general services. So we just wanted to highlight that so it doesn't look like we're dropping any services in the last 5 years of this contract. We're moving on to the capital plan. There is the more significant capital carry forward projects are identified within the report. So I won't go into it in any great detail, but the total capital plan for 2024 is projected to cost approximately 2.2 million. And with the completion of the major capital projects, the capital spending has dropped significantly, and we're really going to be focusing on closing out some of the outstanding items, again, detailed within the report. And we're going to start to work towards some of the smaller closure projects and transfer station occurring in Tassus, Sabalis, and Gold River in the coming year, towards the end of this decade. All of this will require community consultation and engineering design for costs of more detailed cost estimates. Again, this work is work in conjunction with the solid waste management plan so that we can do those full consultation with the community to understand the needs of what those transfer stations will look like, so that we are meeting the needs of those unique needs of each of these communities. Looking further out, again, speaking to the Sabalis closure that is on the books for 2028, with the transfer station to be built by 2027, the Tassus closure in 2030, with the transfer station to be built out by 2029, and the Gold River closure in 2029, and the transfer station either to be built or upgraded in 2029 as well. You'll see that in 2031, we have the construction of cell 3 slated for that year. But what this is really intended to illustrate is that we currently do not have the reserve funds in their capital reserve to be able to fund all these projects. As we've noted previously, in updating this capital cost projections with the 10-year outlook, this detailed view shows that the current reserve contributions is not sustainable across 10 years, and it is something that we do need to look at much more closely. So in order to adequately fund the capital intensive projects in the latter years, our financial modeling indicates that it will be necessary to consider either step increases or a revisit of our tipping fees starting in 2025 to really start to build up those reserves to avoid a significant adjustment. This slide here is to just provide a bit of an update on the debt by our MFA. So while the report kind of touched on the financing on the 3 key capital projects, we wanted to use this opportunity to provide a bit more of a detailed overview of what our debt looks like. So in 2014, the CSWM board had adopted a loan authorization bylaw to borrow up to 45 million, just over 45 million, to fund the historical landfill closure in Cumberland, so the old Bevan landfill, as well as the design, construction of the new engineered landfill that we're currently using today, along with the leachate treatment on site, as well as to close the Campbell River historical landfill. During the construction and design phase, interim financing was utilized, and portions of the interim financing was converted to long-term debt, which has resulted in the participation of 3 long-term issues. So during 2023, as the projects were considered substantially complete, the last of the interim financing was converted to long-term debt. The first conversion happened back in 2020. And then the last one happened in fall of 2023. All 3 issues for the 20-year term, with interest rates varying from 1.99% in 2020 and 4.15% in 2023. So although the $45 million was authorized, the use of the operational surplus and lower than budgeted interest rates for much of the projects allowed for the total debt conversion to total at 39.7 million. So as you'll see in the financial plan, it does not include any further debt as a funding source. However, this will greatly depend on the balance reserve, specifically the capital works reserve, as we move forward. This slide here just provides a bit of an overview of our debt servicing expenses. What you can see here, it's intended to stay stable at $2.7 million throughout the 5-year financial plan until the first of the long-term debt loans are paid off in 2040. All of the long-term debt is projected to be paid off by fall of 2043. These next few slides here is just to provide an overview of our balance for our 3 reserves. And as you can see, our reserve balances are quite low, and there are some significant investments that are coming up, which will need to tap into the capital works reserve. As indicated in the report, per the 2019 asset management plan, indicates that we require a minimum of roughly about $1.03 million per year to maintain just the assets that we have. And we will be updating that asset management plan this year to account for the new assets, predominantly the new landfill, the organics facility, which will only increase our asset retirement obligation contributions. So with the significant capital investments that are going to be coming, we will need to, again, look really closely at our reserve contributions to make sure that we are stocking away enough money for our longer term financial capital investments. And these next few slides is just to provide more of a detailed view as to what our reserve balances will be over the course of the next 5 years. And again, this is really just to illustrate the incremental, the difference that we'll need to make up in order to be able to fund our capital works projects that are coming due. the capital, this is the main one. So as you'll see in 2028, again, this is also to highlight that there is more contribution to reserves, and this is in error because there was a operating contract that wasn't included in there, but generally we're not getting anywhere close to where we need to be in order to be able to hit those numbers to fund the landfill closures and the new cell 3 for 2031. And this is the landfill engineering reserve, and this is the final closure reserve balances. And that concludes the presentation for this budget, and happy to take any questions.
Right, thanks very much, Vivian. I see Director Benesh to start off. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Vivian. Really appreciate the presentation. I have a couple questions. One is around the greenhouse gas emissions reduction strategy. I'm looking at the report that was provided as part of our agenda, and it says that our corporate emissions are estimated at 30,000 tons. Just want to clarify that 30,000 tons is just the emissions of running the waste management services, not the landfill gas. Is that correct?
That is the transportation component. So that's the transfer of waste and the on-site equipment. The landfill itself is roughly accounts for roughly about 35,000 tons a year.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. I think that would be useful to have those numbers in the report as well. So it's just giving the public and giving all of us, a real sense of actually what the greenhouse gases are from the services that were provided, and the garbage is or the waste is creating. And then my follow up on that was the land gas beneficial use one of the priorities for the next year. I know the Campbell River landfill is we're still waiting for that flare to be turned on. That's going to turn the methane into carbon dioxide. But just seeing the landfill gas beneficial use, priority. I'm wondering if you can provide some more details to us on what that might look like.
For the landfill gas emission reduction strategy, we are anticipating to receive the final report from the consultant at the end of this month, and we aim to be able to report out back to the board on the full strategy in the coming months here. Once we have an opportunity to digest that. For the beneficial use agreement, for the Cumberland landfill, it is something that we're continuing to work towards, and we're fairly close in reaching an agreement. So we hope to be able to report out on that. And for the Campbell River facility, we are still awaiting for the commissioning of the flare. We ran into some delays with the Technical Safety BC submission, but the commissioning of the flare is it was slated for this week, but with the colder weather, they were not able to conduct the work, but it is anticipated for hopefully next week. And following that, we are working with a company by the name of WAGA, who was successful in getting the feasibility funding from an FCM grant. And we're looking to be able to explore the conversion of the landfill gas into beneficial use via a virtual pipeline. So that work will commence this year as well.
Great, fantastic. Look forward to hearing more of those details. Would you mind just confirming that you could add the total greenhouse gases to this report?
Yes, I can definitely do that.
Great, thanks so much.
All right, thanks, Director Benesh, and Alternate Director Therrien.
Thank you. Thank you for the report. I'm just wondering if you've got a final number on what the shortfall for capital projects is going to be by 2031 if we continue as we are.
Kelly Brown will be.
Yes, thank you.
provide that.
That's fine.
Right. So we estimate right now that the current shortfall is going to be about $10 million.
About $10 million.
Yeah, by the 2031 start of the project.
So 7 years from now, so we need to have like an extra $1.3 million a year between now and then. If we're gonna not be borrowing again at that point.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks very much. That's a good question, Director Tyrion, and it's got our work cut out for us there. Are there any further questions? Okay, Director Davis.
Now it's working. Okay. Yeah, I don't know if this is really the venue for this, but I think I would like to have a meeting with staff and TASIS to discuss some of the issues around closure of our landfill, because we have a number of questions around it, partly in terms of having a transfer station, potential increase in taxes, whether it actually leads to a reduction in greenhouse emissions. I've heard the argument that we're running out of room and it's scheduled for closure, but I see quite a bit of room there because we have an old decommissioned gravel pit beside the landfill. Again, I think there is potential to keep the landfill open longer. I'm really concerned about the impact on taxation for the people of Tassus and whether this actually achieves the goal of greenhouse reductions. So I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Respond. Do you want to respond, Vivian?
Yeah, just, and we're certainly, as part of the solid waste management plan, we are planning on coming out to each of the communities to, provide, to hear the feedback around the future of waste and as it pertains to each individual community, again, but recognizing that there are unique circumstances within each of the communities. Specifically for Tassus, Sabalis, and Gold River, the closure of the landfill isn't necessarily tied to the greenhouse gas emissions. It's a mandate from the province to close old legacy, old attenuating landfills to ensure that we are, and that's just in working in compliance with the ministry requirements. But we can certainly work with yourself, Mark Tatchell, and staff to go through those details and what's required. And it's, again, we extended the life of the landfill to the best we can, working with the ministry, recognizing that there is airspace still available, and also recognizing our financial position, that we're not able to close those landfills based on our current funding right now. But the direction from the province is to close out these old landfills, as we've done in Campbell River, Cumberland, and so forth.
Could you just help me understand why it is mandated that our landfill should be closed specifically? Is this regarding leachates or?
Yeah, it's really around the environmental protections that the province has laid out in their landfill criteria. Landfills are the newer landfills. This is the one that we have in Cumberland. It's an engineered landfill with layers of protection to ensure that we're not contaminating groundwater. So yeah, it is really around the surface and groundwater management for the neighboring areas.
Okay, yeah, thanks for that. I guess I'm gonna have to take this up with higher levels of government, because our main issue is we have a very large industrial dump adjacent to it, which is leaching into our river toxic chemicals. And this is a far greater concern for us than some leachates from our local dump. We also are making great efforts to do waste diversion in our community, and it's more and more subscribed as time goes on. We have our composting pilot project, which is still going on, which is feeding our community garden. So we're doing whatever we can for waste diversion, which is great. I just have concerns about shipping our garbage from Tassus to Cumberland, which is a 4-hour drive, and that impact on greenhouse emissions. So thanks.
Okay, thanks very much. Another unfunded mandate by the province in that particular case. It is unfunded, I assume, Vivian? The mandate to close, that's an unfunded mandate by the province.
It is from the province.
And it's unfunded.
No, it's not funded.
Okay. It's more downloading of expense and responsibility to local governments. Doug? Oh, sorry, it's Mayor Wells.
Director Wells, thanks very much.
Reflex from yesterday.
Absolutely, it was a long day yesterday. Thank you very much, Chair. Just following up on that question about like that long-term expense that we know is coming, and really wondering if it makes sense for staff to have a report of some sort, because sometimes it's good to have a reserve and have that money set aside. Other times it's better to borrow because the people who benefit, you know, if you're even the people who are paying today may not be benefiting from it later on. And so really kind of getting a sense of that balance, or really some suggestions from staff of sort of a best way forward, just so that the board can really understand as best as we can, the best way forward on how we really plan for that, because it's certainly something that's going to hopefully not sneak up on us.
Sounds great. Lucy will actually be providing a bit of an update on that.
I should just introduce Lucy Wicharik, our Chief Financial Officer, and Kelly Broughton, Senior Financial Accounting Technician, I believe, title-wise. But Lucy, if you want to cover that request from Director Wells.
Thanks for the question through the chair to the director. As we move forward with this solid waste management operation, which is quite extensive. Right now, currently, we're going through the solid waste management plan, and we've talked about really scripting in there financial strategy that we need to tackle. So in order to get to the answer that your question that you're asking, and be able to come forward to this board and lay out options to get to a plan on how we're going to move forward to actually fund these pieces, there are a number of things that we need to be bringing forward to this board. A number of policies we are in the midst as CVRD in developing and finalizing our asset management policy. So it is one policy for this board to consider as well. Come back to our financial planning policy, really take a look at our reserves and what are they for, and what are they attempting to accomplish from funding critical capital assets associated with a number of services here. And then we will start to develop plans in order to determine, so how much money do we need to build in these reserves? Whether it's solid waste management or other utilities like water and sewer, you have assets that last a long time, but they're extremely expensive when you get to the time when they need to be replaced. So the best thing that we can do for our communities is to build that money gradually along the way. Because you don't want to be faced with, as you get to the point when you need to build the new cell and it's 10 million plus, for example, that you have to layer that all with debt. And we all know that an interest component to debt is very costly and very permanent going forward to those residents as well. So for sure, it's all about balance. And one thing, for me to be super careful about is not to be drawing debt that puts us over an edge. So there are analysis that we should conduct in doing that, and making sure that that stays at a place that's very responsible and reasonable for the community. So like I'm saying, right now, the dollars that we are collecting from citizens, about 15% of that is for the $2.7 million in debt that's sitting there right now in this operation. Want to be very careful about not having that extrapolate forward too much, where it's 25% or 30% of what they're paying. And no different than financing your homes. There's a tipping point there. So lots of analysis we need to do, policy to put in place, and most definitely looking forward to coming back to this board and being able to lay those out with options and whatnot, and get to solid plans around that.
That's fantastic. I really appreciate that very articulate answer, and not to sound controversial or be controversial, but I know part of that conversation I'll assume will be, you know, just tipping fees, like how does that play into it as well? And I know there's conflicting perspectives on that as well, but really appreciate your answer. Thank you.
Lucy, just to follow up on that, do you have a rough timeline for when you anticipate that sort of that report and the discussion that ensues occurring?
Internally, as we've talked about it as staff, there are some pieces that we can see ourselves moving through this year. It's going to take us some time to get through. And as I'm saying, I believe that a number of the policy work will have probably 2 or 3 of them. I will guess at this point, we haven't finalized our plans yet that we likely can get through in this particular year. We want to do more work on the various levels of services that are here in this operation. And as Director Wells has mentioned, we have to come back to how are these services funded, and what's the right mix there between tipping fees or other service fees that are there as well. So I at this point, I'd say it's we'll get a really good start on it this year, and probably have to have some other things that come forward in the following year as well. And we'll just keep working those through your financial plans every year as they come through. Okay.
We'll stay tuned and look forward to further information. Thank you. And next we have Director Chapman.
Director Wells addressed the concerns I had. We have future liabilities. We have unfunded liabilities coming up. We don't have a strategy at all in place that I can see yet as how we're going to accommodate those. So I think we need to be thinking more of those unfunded liabilities that we have coming up in the future. And yes, there are going to be some tough decisions to be made and policies change. So I look forward to getting into that. I don't think we should be leaving it for the last minute. If we need to put more in reserves right now, then let's start right now. Let's not wait. That's the equivalent of saying, you know, I need a new truck. I don't know what kind of truck I'm gonna need, but I need a new truck. But until I know what kind of truck I'm gonna have, I'm not gonna save for it. I mean, it's ridiculous. If we have that $10 million liability out there hanging out there, then let's get on with it. And I don't think we should be delaying at all on this. And I agree with Director Wells. We need to move forward sooner rather than later. I don't think we should be delaying. Thank you.
Staff want to respond to the allocations in this year's budget.
Vivian, feel free to weigh in. Of course, I think all I would say is that thank you for the comments, and certainly I think staff would concur that there is a need to be contributing towards reserves. And as Lucy says, there'll be more detail to come and to really refine and describe that plan. I think in this financial plan, what we're seeing is that best effort to allocate as much as we can to reserves, and there are reserve contributions being made within the means of the reserve. So between how much we're collecting through our revenue side and the existing programs and service delivery that we have, we are making those reserve contributions as best we can. And that's described in the budget. So there's you know, it'll be up to the board to direct any changes to that or further increases to the reserve contributions through this budget discussion process at the end of March.
Just hit your button, Director. Thanks.
Good point. At some point, I know there's a lot of moving pieces to this, but at some point, we're gonna have to review the options. What are the options? So I know you don't have a timeline right now, but if you could put some thought to that as to when we can go over some of the options. We had a meeting up in Campbell River discussing some of these future issues, and maybe that discussion needs to be continued at some level, but I think options need to be worked out as to how we're going to accomplish our long-term goals. And we need to finance them.
So Vivian, can you speak to the solid waste management plan and the work that is happening with respect to the fiscal components in the solid waste management plan? I believe that is where a lot of those options would be fleshed out and considered, and then coupling that with the policy updates that Lucy was mentioning. I think that's where we see that intersection of topics coming together and options being looked at. But Vivian, you can probably explain it better.
No, that's absolutely correct. As we started, we kicked off step 3 of the solid waste management plan renewal process at the end of December with our advisory committee, or RSWAC committee. And through that process, we've identified a number of options and identified so that we can achieve the waste diversion goals that are laid out as part of step 2. And through that process, we're going to be bringing forward the cost implications of each of these programs and services, or sorry, programs and initiatives that will come out of this plan, and trying to understand exactly how these programs will be funded in order to, again, achieve our waste diversion goals. Through this process, we will be working closely with the financial team to do a complete financial analysis so that we can understand how all of this will be paid for, in conjunction with the capital projects that we had talked about today. And as part of this, as well, as Lucy mentioned, there will be the policy, the bylaw for reserve contributions, which will be hopefully built into the solid waste management plan so that we can square away the necessary funding to be able to help support all of this. And again, this will all be provided to the board for consideration, likely towards the end of this year. We'll be doing a lot of that analysis and the option feasibility work through the first and second half, or sorry, through the first, second, and third quarter of 2024.
I think our Financial Officer wants to add a few comments to that.
Thanks. If I could, as I'm sitting and listening to Director Chapman's comments, just one suggestion for the board. I think as we roll together this proposed budget for you today, obviously our job is to make sure that we bring forward the risks that we're seeing, and I think that you're hearing the risks, and as we look forward to the future years, and not actually having enough funding as we're talking about. So one thing, and for sure, as I said earlier, it's a lot of money to actually collect in our reserves, and the more that we gradually do it, the better. And one thing the board can consider is, as we come back with recommended budgets, we can have another look at what our 5 to 10 year plan is looking like, and we can layer some other recommendations in there for you. So as one option is as we go into 2024, then maybe we're raising a bit more money that we're putting away. So we're happy to layer that into your next report as an option for you to consider as well.
Thanks, Lucy. And I think it's fair to say I'm hearing from around the table and across the board that that we're looking forward to hearing that this year. And I know we have to sequence it with the solid waste management plan, but I think if that could be an immediate priority as soon as that we can get these decision points in front of us as soon as possible so that we can begin developing the plan. I know that you're aware of this shortfall, but it's significant, and it's not something that that we can delay upon any more than is required by the solid waste management plan process. I'm going to go to Director Vanesh online, and then I'll come to Director Wells. So Director Vanesh.
Thank you, Chair. Just building on what Director Chapman mentioned about the meeting that we had in Campbell River regarding sort of looking at some of these issues. One of the things that came out, and it's on our upcoming resolutions report, is that looking at tipping fees and looking at the distribution of tipping fees, and then hearing this financial plan today. One of the things I think that her mention was just dealing with drywall was $230,000, and I did mention this at that Campbell River meeting, and it seemed like there was support around the board that it seems like right now we are subsidizing the construction and demolition industry in our areas, and I would question whether that's the that's our mandate. And I think, you know, some of the shortfall that we're talking about and needing to add to reserves to look at these long-term capital projects, I'd really encourage this board and, you know, staff to look at ways to ensure that, you know, certainly the construction and demolition industry are paying the true costs of the waste that we're managing for them, rather than, you know, you know, so the average taxpayer having to subsidize it. Thanks.
I just want to clarify on the specific to the drywall. It is on a full cost recovery basis. Drywall is, did raise the tipping fee so that it does align with the tip, so that it is on a full cost recovery for the tipping fee, gate fee at US Gypsum, as well as the transportation cost to truck the material over there. So it's not necessarily subsidized by the rest of the service. I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you for clarifying that. I wasn't sure. No, but even regardless, you know, I think the larger picture is that we are still subsidizing construction and demolition waste, and I think there's room for us to put more into our long-term savings by bringing those costs to their true value.
Okay, thanks, Director Benesh and Director Wells.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just a point of clarity and then another comment that I have. Just to be clear, like, because it sounds like we're given some very specific direction. I just want to confirm whether or not a motion would be required for those things, or if this discussion is enough to help you move forward. Just to make sure that our expectations are are sort of met, if that makes sense.
I think there is no recommendation tied to the staff report. We do know we're coming back. I believe the next board meeting is on February 22nd. And so we do know we're coming back with the next iteration of the budget. And as Lucy noted, there's an opportunity here to provide some options. We've certainly heard the discussion and staff are taking notes to that effect. I think that we're okay in terms of motions on the floor. We'll be able to come back to the board and describe those options to you at that time. I see Vivian's head nodding on that one. So
yeah, just want to make sure that because sometimes we have a discussion and then sometimes things don't align 100%. But I mean, I feel like I said the answers have been really articulate and so I have a lot of confidence. I just wanted to make sure that we come back and we're moving in the right direction. So really appreciate that. And then my comment beyond that, which may also potentially result in a motion maybe under new business. Is this a lot of the things that are driving our costs are as a result of provincial regulation, and whether or not it makes sense to have another meeting. I'm not sure if there's been one in the past few years, but I know we met previously with the province to really push them that as they're creating these new regulations, which are driving up these costs, sometimes exponentially in a way that's very difficult to be sustainable, that they should be providing funding to go along with those regulations. So, and I'm not sure if the chair or other members here would feel the same way, but I'd be happy to put that under new business if the chair would think that that'd be useful.
Sure. Feel free to bring that up under new business. Thanks. All right, Director Benesh, your hand's still up. I'm assuming that's from your previous question. Okay, seeing no further lights. It's been a robust discussion. I think staff indicated they've got a sense of the sort of the interest of the board in moving forward and establishing our reserves. We are simply on receipt of this plan, so just any opposed to receipt? Okay, perfect. And next we're going to move on to a staff report on the board code of conduct policy amendment. If I can get a motion for receipt, please. Okay, Wells and Davis, and I'll hand that over to staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jake Martins is our General Manager of Corporate Services, and Jake will be providing a brief update on this report, and then we can support any discussion the board might have. So Jake, over to you.
Thank you, James and Mr. Chair. I'm pleased to provide a very brief verbal introduction of this item. The proposed policy update that's before the board is being presented to the CSWM board for feedback, given its application as a corporate-wide policy. Codes of conduct, as our elected officials all will be familiar with, are required by the province to be considered by both regional districts and municipalities alike. And in this case, our policy has been reviewed for alignment with current best practices that exist within the sector. The proposal that we've developed has hopefully aligned with those best practices. It's been reviewed by legal counsel, and it certainly hasn't changed the whole structure and nature of it. It has just provided some greater clarity and some further definition around the complaints and resolution procedures, as well as some of the stylistic and grammatical aspects. The sort of key change I want to bring to the board's attention is really just that incorporation of a solicitor to help administer the whole process. Previously, it was to be administered by senior staff, and we recognize that certainly that can lead to problems in relationships and otherwise. So this change would bring about the involvement of a solicitor to, like I said, administer that process, engage an investigator where necessary, and then bring resolution by bringing it forward to the board. With that, Mr. Chair, recognize it's a very brief overview, but pleased to take any questions or provide clarity as necessary.
All right, thanks, Jake. And just scanning the room for hands. Is there anyone online who Director Mawini?
Thank you, Chair. I noticed that in the code of conduct, it sets a time limit of 60 days for somebody to have brought their complaint forward. I'm just curious if there was a time frame in the previous one, and if there was a reason for there being a 60-day limit. To me, I guess I was sort of reflecting on the fact that possibly sometimes it may take some time for somebody to recognize that there's an issue that they need to raise. And I wasn't sure if 60 days was adequate, but I'm curious what staff can say to that. Thanks.
Director Mawini, I believe that there's something I asked to be added to the version for the CVRD board that is 60 days from the time that the person knew or ought to have known that sort of the discoverability principle. Sometimes you're not aware of something if, for example, it's a social media post that's inappropriate and it's not noticed for like 3 months, then that's when the clock begins ticking. Is that correct, Jake? That's also in this version, I believe.
That's correct, Mr. Chair. Yeah, there's also some leeway provided, if there's circumstances that would lead someone to not have known or otherwise. So we've hopefully provided some flexibility to accommodate those situations in which that may be the case.
Does that cover the concern you were having about the time limit, Director Mawini?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Great. Mr. Chair, if I could just finally add that one of the key pieces of advice aligned with that best practice is for expediency in these processes. And I recognize the question was more in relation to bringing forward a complaint, but you'll notice that we've incorporated timelines in a lot of these steps of the process, and that's because the advice given is you want to move through these things quickly and not draw them out for extended periods of times in which further conflict and challenges in relationships can occur.
Okay, thanks, Jake, for that. Just going to ask if there's anyone else online who has any questions. I don't see any lights in the room, and this is for receipt. So seeing none, there's a motion for receipt on the table. Oh, Director Kerr, please go ahead.
Thank you. Sorry, I was a little slow on that. Okay, one thing I didn't notice on my copy anyways was the changes to the existing policy and having that highlighted or set aside. So we know what's in existence right now and what the proposed changes are. So is there an opportunity to circulate a copy that has that broken down?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So yeah, and I certainly appreciate where the comment is coming from. We did, like I noted at the beginning, there was a number of sort of stylistic changes made to it, and it made through track changes quite difficult to actually read through the document in a reasonable manner. So we attached the the proposed new policy and then the current policy in its form, but appreciate that that makes it a bit more challenging to understand specifically where all the changes are. But as I noted, we looked to try and provide that, but it did actually make the document quite challenging to read, given all of the track changes and moving clauses from one location to another or changing words. So yeah, appreciate the concern, but we've provided both the proposed and the current, and highlighted in a summary fashion in the staff report where those main changes are.
Thank you.
All right, seeing no further, and Director Senate.
Yes, thank you. Just back to what Director Mawhinney had mentioned about the 60 days and the extension. I see the corporate officers can extend the time, but perhaps could it not also come back to the board for an extension as well in the circumstances? I think what Director Mawhinney is probably referencing, and as females, we understand that sometimes behavior that is more experienced by women between board members or other people or maybe even staff takes a long time to process. It's very difficult to deal with, and perhaps that's an exception too, because our government has recognized that anything that has to do with sort of that intimate or sexualized nature doesn't have any limitations on time because of the nature of the trauma that's created. And I'm just wondering if our policies can sort of reflect what our province has already recognized. Thanks.
I think we try to sort of accommodate that ability to have some flexibility in the policy, and so you're right. The corporate officer, the CAO, if the circumstances otherwise warrant acceptance, then that 60-day time frame is able to be adjusted and worked with. And I think yeah, that example you're using there, Director Senate, is exactly what we want to consider as we approach these sorts of codes of conduct complaints. We don't want to put in such a rigid or complex structure that there's this go no go period where a complaint can't be considered. We want to have that flexibility and not encumber the policy so much that it's unworkable. So we've tried to allow for that flexibility in here. Yeah, I hope that kind of answers the question or gives you some comfort that the flexibility is here in the policy.
And Director Senate, if I may, I think the reason for adding the discoverability piece is exactly the same as it is in legislation, is that it takes a while to, as you said, to become aware of what happened and the consequences that may be there. And I like to think that the discoverability piece both covers that and also provides sort of interpretive guidance for as it's applied.
I would submit that is not what discoverability does. Discoverability, if I am at an event and I get touched inappropriately, I know that day I've been touched inappropriately. It's just the ability of people to deal with that type of behavior is not something that's relatively easy. And I do suggest that's a different type of trauma, and the province has actually recognized that there is no limitation period on that kind of stuff. And maybe we don't want to go that far, but we have to maybe be a little bit more sensitive to those issues. That's all. Thanks.
Okay, thanks very much. All right, and appreciate the comments, and I think staff certainly that approach to interpreting things is understood here. At this point, we're simply on receipt, and I don't know, Jake, I just want to confirm with you what Director Senate says in terms of the way that we apply our policy. Do you feel that we're that is that anything further needs to be done, or that the policy encompasses that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Excuse me. Yeah, I think we've certainly, in the development of this, there's been no shortage of conversation around trying to make this flexible enough for situations that could warrant maybe something outside of the specific timelines. It's tough to fit all the different types of complaints into one process for sure and make sure that it accommodates everything. In this case, I think if there was a complaint in which those types of circumstances were raised and our policy suggested it can't be considered, that would be something where we could look to come forward to the board if we felt the merits were warranted and seek an exception or waiver of that policy in that situation. So yeah, I think we're certainly sensitive to wanting to make sure that where there's a breach of the code and the merits are there for it, that there's not so rigid structure in the policy that it can be eliminated on those terms and not based on the merits of the issue.
Okay, thanks very much. Appreciate that comment. And Director Wells.
Thank you, Chair. And just kind of following up, I really appreciate the comments that have come forward. And I just wondered if, because there's that timeline of when you first found out about it or were made aware. And I wonder if there could be wordage in there that and are able to respond, because I think that's sort of what I'm hearing is that the ability to respond may not be immediate. And so if there's already a thing in there that says when you are made aware of it, but also when you're able to respond, that might, so we're not making exceptions all the time or that kind of thing. And I could be wrong, but I just thought I'd throw that out.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, and we can certainly take that away and consider, this was the point of this exercise was certainly to seek this type of feedback. So this is exactly what we were hoping for, and we can take that away, consider that, and then bring forward to the board when they finally consider, how they might want to address that.
Okay, thanks. That's a helpful piece of wording. And Director Morin.
Thanks, Chair. I know I had brought this up in the other conversation, but maybe I appreciated the comments that have been made already. And maybe, Jake, if you recall, I had a question around reporting to having that limitation of who to make the report to. And I just wanted to point out that staff had said that there would be flexibility. So if there was discomfort with reporting to a particular person, that there would be some flexibility, because just to recognize that, and we have a great team of staff right now, but at times, the issues could involve the person that we would be reporting to. Does that make sense, Jake? Are you able to clarify that there is some flexibility with that aspect as well?
Yeah, I think Director Morin, you may be referring to the requirement built into the process in which prior to submitting a complaint, the complainant must engage with the respondent in an informal manner to try and resolve it. And in certain circumstances, clearly that's not appropriate. And so I think we certainly had discussion about that not being a requirement, clearly, if it's not appropriate to be trying to engage to resolve that complaint at that early stage. And there's also language in the policy around even the submission of the complaint. So yeah, I think if I'm following you, we've certainly aware of and feel like the policy addresses that type of situation.
Yeah, and I think that kind of relates a bit to what Director Sinnott was saying as well, that there may be some, some discomfort or just inappropriateness to deal with it directly with the person. Thank you.
Thanks for bringing that up, and I appreciate the response, Jake. All right, motion for receipt on the table. So I'll just ask at this point if anyone opposed. All right, and that passes. And the next report is the resolution status report. If I get a motion for receipt.
Move. Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, so we'll vote on that. Any opposed? And that passes. And we're now just on to bylaws and resolutions. This is for first and second reading. So this is Comox Strathcona Waste Management Illegal Dumping Regulation 470 2017 Amendment number 1. And
First, second.
move first.
Second.
Okay. First and seconded for first and second. And any opposed? And that passes. And for third reading? First and seconded for third. A lot of numbers. And any opposed? Okay, and that passes also. So we have new business. We have Director Vanesh's motion, and there's also a piece by Director Wells, and I believe we'd probably need a motion to when after we're finished Director Vanesh's to then allow Director Wells' piece. So let's proceed. Director Vanesh, do you want to speak to your new business?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Apologies for the late addition to the agenda. And just wanted to, really what I'm looking for is a creative way for this board to find up to $1,500 to put a new roof or to fix the leaky roof on the Cortez Island Free Store. As many of you are aware, the Free Store is, really follows our mandate of diverting waste out of landfills. It's a key cultural part of Cortez Island, and the board is also looking at ways that we can expand these across the district. The roof is currently leaking and risk at causing further infrastructure damage to the building that is located on the Cortez Waste Management Center site. And the community has raised approximately $4,500 for this already, and looking from staff and directors for ideas on where we could potentially provide the up to $1,500 to complete this, so we can get it fixed right away. And if there is a way for that if there is a way, then I would make a motion that we move forward with it. Thank you.
So Director Vanesh, I understand that you don't have a specific motion you're wanting a general comment by staff on the situation, and that might help guide you in creating a motion. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Can I ask staff to provide a response?
Sure. And Vivian, if you want to start with respect to the Free Store, and then I might have a point to add or two. So Vivian.
Thank you. Thank you for the question, Director Vonish. The way that our service is currently structured, we do not cover the Free Store service, and we don't own or operate any of them. So similar to the Hornby service, that Free Store is entirely under the purview of HERA, the resident association, and it's paid for by the local service. Again, I can certainly appreciate that it is a beloved service within the community, but it does deviate from our current policy. But yeah, I'll turn it over to our CEO with respect to potentially other alternative measures that just to fund this.
Great. Thanks, Vivian. Yeah, and I can appreciate the value this facility has to the community, and you're right, there's a connection to the solid waste mandate. But as Vivian says, it's not something that the CSWM has responsibility for or funds. If the Comox Valley Regional District were to be faced with a similar request from a nonprofit or a community organization, we would look to the Rural Community Grants Service, which is, I think in the Strathcona Regional District, it's known as the Grant and Aid. And that's a service in the CVRD's perspective. That's a service that we use to provide funding to some of the rural community societies and nonprofits that provide activities in those rural areas. And so that would be the way the CVRD would approach this, and maybe something for the Strathcona Regional District to consider.
Thank you. Yeah. The Free Store in Cortez is obviously in a tricky situation. It is not a nonprofit society itself, so it cannot apply for a grant and aid through the Strathcona Regional District. The building is on the Waste Management Center property, so technically our insurance is covering this building, and I hear you that this isn't part of our mandate yet. But I'm looking for any other creative ways that we might be able to pull together just this very small amount of funding that would allow us to fix this roof. Are there any other creative ideas for ways that we could do this?
Yeah, so yes, I understand it is on the property, but it's not something we've ever had responsibility for. And I guess I'm just mindful of the previous discussion on the financial plan and that awareness of costs and impacts to the service as a whole, and making sure that the CSWM is keeping its focus and priorities on the mandate and the responsibilities that we do have. So it isn't something that we have funded in the past, and it isn't part of the current CSWM mandate. And so it does pose a bit of a challenge there. I guess staff would have to take this away and look at some other options. This is being put on us kind of at the last minute, and I understand there's probably urgency to it. But it does pose a problem to try to come up with those kinds of creative solutions in the moment. So yeah, I'm at a bit of a loss to offer much more in terms of solutions at this time.
Okay, I appreciate the CO. Then it is something that can arrive on our desk at 9:25, so I can understand it.
Yeah.
But there are a couple of lights on in the room, so maybe this will generate some useful thoughts. But and Director Grant.
Yeah, thanks. I don't know Cortez Island very well, but I know that if you have any service clubs over there, possibly some in the Campbell River Quadra Island area, it would take nothing to get $1,500 from them to fix or finish a roof or get the public to come in and just help you out with it. I don't see this being something that should be at this board table, and yet it doesn't seem very insurmountable to me. So
that's a useful comment. Yeah, it's a small amount, and I think it's a worthy cause. I'm sure there'll be lots of community members who might be willing to support that. So I'm going to go to Director Moore and move to the other lights in the room.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I guess I was thinking a little bit along the lines of Director Grant. Whether there are some small grants out there, even specifically around green type initiatives or something like that. And I don't know if staff would have any ideas, because it isn't a complete fit for this service necessarily. Those mini grants, I know there's Community Foundation has those neighborhood grants that people have used for community gardens and other environmental type initiatives. And I don't know if that's maybe another avenue. So yeah, I guess sort of thinking along the same lines that there probably is something out there, and but I don't know if staff would know about any of those smaller opportunities that would be more appropriate for this cost. Thank you.
Thanks, Director Morin. And I see like both online and in the room lighting up. So Director Vanesh, there's a lot of people trying to help you work on solving this problem. Director Wells.
Thank you, Chair. And yeah, it's unfortunate, and I'm happy to have a longer conversation offline. I know service clubs are a little bit of a challenge on Cortez, but I also know that there's been great success with fundraisers, especially in conjunction with Cluhus First Nations and the space that they have. And so I'd highly recommend that. To me, the big issue is the timeline. Director Morin, I think the Community Foundation idea, that might be a quicker way to get some funding. The challenge you run into is that most organizations, you're looking at almost a month or two by the time it gets through executive stuff. So doing something more like a fundraiser is likely to get you beans in your jeans a little bit faster than trying to get through bureaucracies, even with nonprofit organizations.
I'm sorry,
Right.
did you say beans in your jeans?
Director Wells is known for his colorful euphemisms, but I hadn't heard that before, but it rhymes, so that's good. We'll go next to Director Chapman and then to Grieve and online. But Director Chapman.
Thank you, Chair. Just recognizing this is the last minute item to bring to staff, and I'd make a motion this be referred to staff for a report.
So find a seconder.
Sure.
Okay, seconded by Director Davis. All right, that's what I think. So there's a motion, and we've got a few more lights so people can speak to that. So Director Grieve.
Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, speaking from a rural standpoint, I think the CAO brought it up that we do have a rural community grants, and I think the SRD have them too. If not directly for that project, there must be an area association that's a nonprofit that you could channel the money through fairly quickly. Other than that, I like Director Wells' idea. I know there's some great musicians over there. So just get to hire the community hall and throw a due, and I'm sure you could get it between the donations and the dance. So I know musicians always play for free, but of course lawyers, they always do your divorce for free too, right? In other words, pay the musicians a little bit. Thank you.
Okay, so we are, I think now there's a motion on the table, we're speaking to the motion, but I think a bit of latitude, given that people are suggesting ideas along the way. Director Deck.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I don't really have any ideas, just a comment that it's a shame we couldn't help them out right away, because if it rains as much there as it does in Zavalis, they don't have a lot of time. Thank you.
Fair comment. Okay, and we go to Director Wells in the room, and then there are two more online.
Yeah, I have to, go back to that timeline thing that, to get something done quickly is really, I think, of paramount importance. And unfortunately, I think, using staff capacity for a report that's probably going to reiterate what we're saying right now I don't think it's the best use of staff time, especially because it's going to take at least a month for it to come back to us. So I think finding that faster solution is probably a better one. I do appreciate where this is coming from for that report. I just don't know that it's really going to do what it needs to do in the timeline that it needs to be done in.
Okay, appreciate the comment. And Director Sinnott. Director Sinnott, you have your hand up. Great.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Absolutely, thanks.
Oh, thank you. So I'm in favor of the motion with the idea that we look at different options to allow the board to have some small contingency fund to fund different projects. But I see that there could be issues with respect to regional districts and needing the types of association you fund. But I think it's worthwhile if this facility is diverting waste and it's on the waste management land. There seems to be a nexus and a benefit to us that it's worth a consideration. It might not be in time for the needs of Cortez, but it is something going forward. I would support a staff coming back to us with options.
All right, thanks for that comment. I see no further lights in the room, and is there one more hand? Director Banesh. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks everyone for the comments. I really appreciate it. Director Chapman, I really appreciate you making the motion on the staff report. I think it's pretty clear based on what's been said already, and that this is really time sensitive, and that's why it was sort of brought to the board here sort of hastily. Just one idea I did have, and last thing I'll throw out there is would it be possible to increase the operator of the Waste Management Center's contract by $1,500 for waste management diversion activities? Would that be just a very simple way that would allow it to happen, that is using a mechanism that we already have?
Vivian, can you address that? I'm looking at a report from several years ago, but there's probably something a little bit more current on the role of the contractor.
The role of the contractor is specifically for the operation of the facility itself, not necessarily the maintenance of the building. And the building, the crux of it is we don't own the building. So for us to fund the repair of a building that we don't own, again, goes against our policy. So yeah, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to that, James. Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks. I appreciate that perspective on that. And Director Sinnott, did you have another comment you wanted to make?
No, I'm trying to get my Zoom to work properly. I apologize for the hand.
Okay, that sounds good. Thanks. Just checking. All right. So there's a motion on the floor. I don't see any further lights or hands. Yeah. Lisa, could you just reread the motion, please?
Just to refer the item to staff on options.
Okay, it's a fairly simple motion. Okay, so all those in. Did everyone catch that online? Okay, great. All right, so all those in favor? And online, or so Director Rice, was there anyone else in favor online? Director said it sounded like she was.
Yes, I'm in favor.
Okay, great. Anyone else may perhaps speak up online if you are in favor?
It's Jonathan, I'm in favor.
Kerr in favor.
Yep. Vinesh in favor.
Mooney in favor.
And
Baker in favor.
More.
Okay, and was that both Kerrs? I see Director, is that, yeah, I see hands from both. So perhaps just to clarify, Lisa, could you just read through the votes that you saw online just to make sure that we've got everyone recorded correctly?
Yeah.
Well, there you go. There's perhaps an easier option. Okay, thanks. So anyone opposed? Director Turian? Director Wells? Director Nicol, is that it? Opposed? Okay. Okay. And anyone online opposed? Okay. That passes. Thanks very much, everyone. And next, Director Wells had a new item he wanted to add, so I'll just hand him the mic. And perhaps you could describe what it's, if it's a new topic, then we'll need a motion to approve it.
Whether we accept it or not, absolutely. I'll just start by apologizing to Director Vinesh for voting against the report, even though I just want to make clear that I am very much in support of getting that roof fixed. So really it comes down to the things that we were talking about during the budget and how, our largest drivers, and I think traditionally our largest drivers are a result of regulations that come down from the province. And that has taken our solid waste function, which was balanced on the backs of tipping fees, to a point now where we tax and have a tax requisition, which is, I don't want to say it's spiraling out of control, but it is massive compared to where it was 10 years ago. And I see that as a challenge. And so my motion would be, and just because I had a little bit of time to think about it, would be for our co-chairs to request a meeting with the province, probably Minister Hyman, I would expect, and to discuss these challenges and request the government provide funding when they create new regulations that are going to impact our budgets here. And the thing that I would probably add to that is to also see if the co-chairs would like to bring this to, I believe, the chair and chairs and CAO conference. Is that still happening? That maybe this is a topic that be brought up there, because I know when I was chair of solid waste here, that was something that was shared across the province, and I'm sure it hasn't changed. So that might be another opportunity to have a voice with the province, but that larger voice with the chairs and CAOs.
Thanks very much, and perhaps we'll come back to you for a more concise version of the resolution.
Yeah, sorry.
But first of all, to accept this item, can I just, is anyone opposed to considering this resolution? I don't see anyone opposed, so yep. Director.
Would it be appropriate for us to also include that this be sent to UBCM? I'm sure other areas of the province are experiencing the same challenges meeting these regulations. So maybe we can discuss it among ourselves and then transfer something up to AVICC, then to UBCM, so we can get some traction on it instead of trying to go alone.
That's an excellent suggestion. And my understanding is because this body is not a member of AVICC, it would not be able to put a resolution to AVICC, but I'd be happy to put together a resolution of that sort and bring it to the CVRD board.
Well, actually, this this body is the CVRD board with the Strathcona members added. So yes, this body could submit to
submit
the
directly.
ABICC. Alternatively, because I believe this would be a province-wide topic of interest, then it may be something directly submitted to the UBCM. And that would also give us time to come back to this board with such a resolution for the UBCM. The deadline for the ABICC, I believe, is before the next solid waste board meeting.
February,
So
February 8th, so that would be a tight deadline.
Mhm.
Okay. Great. So I guess it's up to Director Wells to sort of, I think, perhaps restate his resolution. If you want to include that within it, then that would be optimal.
Yeah, and I think the resolution for ABICC may not be articulated yet, but I would think, and I'd be happy to help work on that if we wanted to have something that you know, because if this board approves that goes forward, the tweaking of it can happen outside this meeting. I don't necessarily want to wordsmith it. I'm having a hard enough time with the thoughts in my own head right now, but
well, I
happy
was
to
going
include.
to ask staff, would you like a resolution directing staff to draft a resolution for ABICC? Or can that be taken as understood after this discussion?
yeah, I actually think the submission would be best to the UBCM, just given that it's
Sorry,
publicly
the
province-wide topic.
UBCM using wrong.
And I would suggest that just the board has full input on that submission, that we would come back to a subsequent board meeting before the deadline for the UBCM. In terms of a resolution today, I think Director Wells, your suggestion would be around a request to meet with the minister or the co-chairs to meet with the minister to discuss provincial regulations and funding requirements for those regulations. And that the matter be also brought to the regional district chairs and CAO's meeting. And finally, that a submission to UBCM be drafted for a subsequent CSWM board meeting.
You have articulated my thoughts fantastically.
All right.
So yeah, and I totally get that point of ABICC. It's a short turnaround. This is really a provincial thing, and there may be an opportunity. I know I think I presented some stuff at the chairs and CAO thing, so you might be able to get that on the agenda to discuss there, and there may be again further support through that organization. So, but whatever James just said, Mr. Warren, I appreciate, and that is my motion. If somebody would like to second it.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on this?
Right, Director Hillian.
Director Hillian, thanks.
And I'll turn my.
Thanks to both chairs. I'll support the motion. I don't think there's any problem with it, but this issue's been around for a long time. Have we not already been here and done that with asking the province, explaining to the province what the problem is with their regulations around the decommissioning of landfills and the downloading of the cost? And, you know, perhaps there's other people who've been around longer than I have who can comment on that. I'm not sure why the answer would be any different now than it's been in the past, but it never hurts to request another conversation.
Director Wells, Director Wells.
Director Grant was ahead of me.
Yeah, the point of this that I can see is that I'm with you. I think the provincial government has parties on Friday and decide what they're going to download on us this time. And I don't really think that we're going to get much action on this, but I think it keeps the pressure on them to say, hey, this is getting really expensive and you guys are causing it. And it's throughout government. It's not just here. So I think it's good to just keep plugging this in front of them until they finally start to get onto it. So I don't think we're going to see any action on it, but I think it's good to just keep it in front of their face and let them know that we're paying attention.
All right, and Director Wells.
Yeah, thanks, Director Grant. And yeah, I'd kind of reiterate those comments. And in particular, what makes this year a little bit different is that there's a thing happening later on where the province is going to have a little election. So, you know, the timing, although may not really get, sorry, some more beans in our jeans, but, you know, the idea that, you know, keeping up that pressure, and I think this year it is certainly a better year to potentially get some ideas and really you know, the idea of saying when you are creating these things to try to have some funding or grant opportunities to facilitate the work that's being, and I think Councillor Hilling's comment of being downloaded to us is appropriate. Thanks.
All right, and Director Chapman.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate those comments. I think we should be bringing this issue, being there's an election coming up, to the opposition parties. So, you know, if they want to try and make hay on it and make some political promises to put more jeans in our jeans, I think that might be worthwhile.
I think it's worth bringing a message worth bringing to people who will listen and have the capacity to act on it, and may or may not increase the amount of jeans in our jeans. I think at this point, I don't see any further lights, or there are no hands online. Okay, all right. Thanks for the resolution and the wordsmithing. It's been a collective effort. So any opposed? And that passes. All right, thanks very much, everyone. And I think at this point, there's nothing left in terms of new business, so it's just termination. All right, any opposed? Seeing none. All right, thanks, everyone. We'll see you next month.
Thank you.